While I was traveling, my daughter-in-law spent $5,000 on a vase under my name. To make up for the trouble of having you around, she wrote, "The surprise came when I tripled her rent. I'm happy to have you here. Follow my story until the end and tell me the city where you are watching from so I can see how far my story has spread." My hand shook as I held the envelope and glanced at the credit card statement. There it was, clear and undeniable. $5,000 charged to Wentworth's Fine Antiques. I had not bought anything from that place. It had been years since I purchased anything that pricey. My heart raced as I quickly reviewed the rest of the bill. Everything else seemed ordinary: groceries, the monthly library donation, a few little treats from the bookstore. Yet that $5,000 charge screamed loudly in the silence. With trembling fingers, I grabbed my phone and called the credit card company. Yes, they confirmed a purchase was made at Wentworth's. The customer service agent said the item was picked up in person. The card was physically used and the transaction approved with my PIN. My PIN? That could not be. I kept it written in my diary, safely hidden. Then, the shock hit me hard. Nicole had been in my home while I was away visiting my sister in Maine. Paul had insisted she water my plants, although I told him the neighbor would do it. Paul said, "Nicole wants to help. Let her do this." I ended the call and headed directly to Wentworth's, the quaint and exclusive antique store downtown. The bell chimed cheerfully as I pushed the door open, a sound sharply conflicting with the uneasy sensation growing in my gut. "Mrs. Collins, what a pleasure to see you again." The shop owner greeted me warmly. "Again?" I thought to myself, since I had never set foot in this place before. "Your daughter-in-law has impeccable taste," he said, unaware of my bewilderment. "That Ming Dynasty replica vase is one of our finest items." I forced a polite smile, even though I felt far from happy. "Could you tell me when it was purchased?" he asked. "Last Thursday around midday. Your daughter-in-law mentioned it was meant to be a surprise for you." He laughed softly. "She said you'd be delighted." Delighted? I nodded automatically and requested a copy of the receipt. The owner seemed a bit taken aback, but handed it over. At the bottom was my signature, or rather a very close imitation of it. I then drove to Paul's and Nicole's home. Mine, technically, since I owned the place and rented it to them for a fraction of its actual value. I had bought the property as an investment long ago. When Paul and Nicole faced financial difficulties after their wedding, I offered it at a price they could afford. "Just until you get on your feet," I had said. That was half a decade ago. The house looked flawless as always. Nicole was very proud of how everything appeared. I knocked on the door and she answered, her perfect smile wavering a little when she saw me. "Anne, what an unexpected visit. Paul is not home from work yet." I said I was not here to see Paul, as I stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "I came because of this." I held up the receipt. Her face remained unchanged, but a flicker appeared in her eyes. "Oh, that surprise." She smiled in a way that never reached her eyes. "It is in the living room." There it stood, prominently placed on the mantel, a vase in blue and white, elaborate and undeniably gorgeous, yet unquestionably not mine. "Why would you purchase this in my name?" I asked softly. Nicole's smile grew thinner. "I left you a note with it. Did you not find it?" I had not been home yet, having gone straight from the credit card company to the antique shop. "What note?" She sighed as if I was being difficult and moved to a drawer in the side table. She pulled out a cream-colored envelope and handed it to me. Inside was a card with elegant handwriting. "To make up for the burden of having you in our lives. The least we could do, Nicole." The words hit me like physical strikes. Burden, the least we could do. Every word dripped with disdain. "I do not understand," I whispered, though I began to understand all too well. "It is simple," Nicole said, her voice light but her eyes cold. "You have done so much for us, letting us stay in this house almost for free. It must be such a burden to help us out. I wanted to give you something in return. Her words were poisonous yet sweet. The vase was not a gift. It was a declaration, a display of power, and she had bought it using my own money. I reflected on the years I had devoted to supporting them, the lowered rent, the funds I had lent Paul for his business endeavor that was never repaid, and the innumerable hours of unpaid childcare for their son, my grandson, as they enjoyed weekend escapes. And this was how Nicole regarded me, as a burden. I folded the note with care and returned it to the envelope. A cold and resolute feeling settled deep in my chest. I said, "I see," my voice steadier than I had anticipated. "Thank you for clarifying that." Without another word, I walked away. The image of that vase, my vase, purchased with my money, burned fiercely in my mind. As I drove home, my thoughts were not on the $5,000 or the fraudulent charge. Instead, they lingered on the years of subtle disregard, the dismissive looks, and the way Nicole routinely talked over me during family gatherings. For the first time, I perceived everything with absolute clarity and realized things could no longer continue in this manner. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea that had gone cold and resolved to make a change. If Nicole considered helping her family a burden, she was about to experience the weight of a true financial burden. Restless through the night, every time I closed my eyes, I saw Nicole's smug face and heard her sweet voice labeling me a burden. At dawn, I rose and retrieved the old photo albums from the closet. There was Paul as a baby, his tiny hand curled around my finger, and Paul at 8 years old, missing. His front teeth showed off proudly as he held up a fish he had caught alongside his father. Then came the last photo of the three of us taken 2 weeks before Robert's heart attack. My husband's arm rested around me. Paul stood between us, all of us smiling brightly with no clue about the future. After Robert passed away, it was just Paul and me facing the world alone. I was only 43 with a 12-year-old son to raise by myself. I worked 2 jobs, teaching during the day and doing bookkeeping at night, just to keep our home and put meals on the table. The life insurance was hardly enough, but I had saved every single penny for Paul's university fund. I turned the pages further. Paul's high school graduation, where I sat alone, clapping until my hands ached as he received his diploma. Then his college graduation, where I spent money I could barely spare on a new dress just to look good in the photos. That day, I was incredibly proud of him. Then the photos of Paul and Nicole's wedding appeared. I recalled giving them my diamond earrings, the ones Robert gifted me on our 10th anniversary as a wedding present. Nicole had smiled, saying they had a charming vintage appeal, yet I never saw her wear them even once. I closed the album and made myself another cup of tea. The kitchen was silent apart from the ticking of the old clock Robert had repaired shortly before he passed. It was in this very kitchen that I had taught Paul to make pancakes, helped him with his schoolwork, and listened to his stories. He suffered heartbreaks and celebrated his achievements. After the wedding, Paul seemed different. At the beginning, I assumed it was just the usual adjustment period for newlyweds. However, over time, the phone calls grew increasingly rare. Whenever we did speak, Nicole was always present, closely monitoring our conversation. Paul would begin to talk about his job or personal matters, and Nicole would interrupt, saying, "Paul, your mother does not want to hear about that." Yet, I truly wanted to listen. I longed to know everything about my son's life. I clearly recalled the day they told me Nicole was expecting a baby. I was thrilled at the thought of becoming a grandmother. I offered my support in any way needed. "We do not need your help," Nicole had responded firmly. "We have everything under control." However, when little Robert arrived, they suddenly required my assistance as a free babysitter. Nicole's mother lived in Florida and only visited twice a year, so I became the grandmother on call. I did not mind, as I adored spending time with my grandson, but it stung when Nicole would come back from her outings or spa visits and barely notice I was there. She would say, "Oh, you are still here." as if it was unexpected to find me in their home after I'd spent many hours looking after their child. I would sip my tea and gaze at the sunrise through the window. 5 years ago, when Paul and Nicole faced financial difficulties, I had offered them the rental property I purchased with my retirement funds. It was a lovely home in a safe neighborhood, worth much more. I had only charged them a modest amount for rent just to help them get started, I had said, but they never really got on their feet. Paul earned a good salary, yet Nicole did not work, and their spending always seemed to outpace their earnings. Designer outfits, extravagant holidays, the newest gadgets. Meanwhile, I lived a simple life in the very same home where I had raised Paul, driving a decade-old car and buying clothes only when they were on sale. I never voiced complaints. I was glad to support my son, but started to question if I had done too much. Had I allowed a sense of entitlement to develop? Was my kindness being interpreted as weakness? There had been subtle hints over time, moments when Nicole's facade broke. The time she accidentally smashed my mother's china teacup, the sole memento I possessed of my mother, the way she moved my furniture around when she visited without consulting me, as if my style was embarrassing. Her remarks about my clothes, hair, and cooking, always delivered with a smile but intended to wound deeply. She once said, "That dress is so sensible, Anne. It's nice that you're comfortable with how you look at your age." Another time, "Your hair is so unchanging. You've kept the same style for, 20 years? And about my cooking, this casserole is interesting. I suppose cooking wasn't much emphasized in your generation." Each insult felt like a small but sharp cut, and over time, they had built up into a hurt that never truly faded. And there was Paul, standing silently by without saying a word. Occasionally, he would cast me a sorry look, but he never opposed his wife. He never stood up for me. My son, whom I had raised to be compassionate and polite, remained silent as his wife diminished his mother's worth. I finished my tea and cleaned the cup, my actions automatic from years of repetition. The house felt too still, almost unnerving. Sometimes I longed for the commotion of having a child nearby, the lively sounds and energy of family life. But what sort of family did I have at this point? A son who either could not or did not want to defend me. A daughter-in-law who considered me a nuisance. A connection that felt more like a duty than a bond. And now this situation, a $5,000 vase bought with my own money, returned with a note revealing the disdain Nicole held for me. It was not just about the cost, though that was bad enough. It was the accumulation of years of disrespect, the subtle harshness, and the gradual loss of my role in my son's world. I picked up the phone and called a number I never imagined needing. "Henderson Law Office," a friendly voice answered. "Yes," I said calmly. "I would like to schedule a meeting with Mr. Henderson. It concerns a rental property I own." Hanging up, I felt a sensation I had not experienced in ages, the quiet power of standing up for oneself. It was time Paul and Nicole understood that my generosity had boundaries and some lessons carry a price they were unready to pay. Mr. Henderson's office had the scent of leather and aged books, a place where my fight would begin. The lawyer was in his 60s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that overlooked nothing. I had known him casually for several years since we were both part of the same book club, but until this moment, I had never required his legal expertise. After I explained the situation, Paul said, "So, Anne, you want to understand the options available to you regarding the rental property?" I nodded, folding my hands quietly in my lap to steady nerves that threatened to betray me. Despite my resolve, I had never been comfortable with confrontation. For 5 years, I have charged them rent significantly below market value. Paul made a note and confirmed, "And there is no formal lease, only a month-to-month arrangement." "That is correct," I replied hesitantly, trailing off as I admitted I had hoped they would eventually purchase their own home in case circumstances changed. He leaned back, saying, "Actually, this could benefit you. As the property owner, You have the right to raise the rent with proper notice. In this state, that means 30 days for a month-to-month tenancy. I asked, "Is there no restriction on how much I can increase it?" He responded, "Not in this county. Some areas have rent control laws, but this is not one of them." He studied me for a moment, then inquired, "May I ask what you are considering?" I hesitated, feeling suddenly self-aware, worried he might view my intentions as spiteful. However, I recalled Nicole's note, the years filled with subtle hurts, and my son's silence before his wife's conduct. "I was considering adjusting it to match the market value," I said cautiously. Mr. Henderson nodded in agreement. "That sounds completely fair. Let me check similar properties in that neighborhood." He turned to his computer, typed for a few minutes, then angled the screen so I could see. "Here are the current rental rates in the area. As you can observe, comparable properties rent for about 3 times what you are charging." I looked at the figures, a strange mix of validation and remorse flooding me. 3 times their current rent. It would be a major increase, one that would likely force them to dip into their savings or reduce their lifestyle. "It's a big change," Mr. Henderson noted, reading my expression, "but it's well within your rights as the landlord." I nodded, thinking of the $5,000 vase perched on their mantelpiece, thinking of Nicole's smug grin, remembering all the times I had swallowed my pride for the sake of harmony. "I want to go ahead," I said decisively. Mr. Henderson printed a formal rent increase notice. "Fill this out, keep a copy for your records, and deliver it to them. Make sure you get proof they received it. Either have them sign to confirm receipt or send it via certified mail." I took the paper, feeling its significance in my hands. This was more than just a legal form. It was a declaration. For the first time in many years, I was standing up for myself. "There is one more thing," I said cautiously. "The credit card charge, the vase." Mr. Henderson's face grew stern. That situation was completely different. Using another person's credit card without permission is considered fraud, even if it involves family members. He suggested filing a police report. The idea made my stomach tighten. Despite my anger, did I really want to risk seeing my son's wife arrested? What impact would that have on Paul or my grandson? I confessed that I wasn't sure I was ready to take such a drastic step. He nodded with understanding. There were other possibilities. I could contest the charge with my credit card company by stating I had not approved the purchase, or I might ask Nicole to return the vase and obtain a refund. But neither choice felt right. If I challenged the payment, the shopkeeper, who seemed honest, could be hurt, and confronting Nicole for the vase return was something I was not prepared for at this moment. I told him to let me ponder over that later. For now, I wanted to concentrate on the rental property. Mr. Henderson agreed, saying it was a smart approach, taking things one step at a time. When I returned home, I completed the notice to increase the rent, raising it to 3 times the current amount as the market analysis recommended. I made a copy for my records and sealed the original in an envelope. I planned to deliver it personally the next day. Later that night, I got a message from Paul. It read, "Mom, are you okay? Nicole mentioned, you seemed troubled during your visit." My fingers lingered over the phone because there was so much I wanted to express. Still, I felt this was no conversation for text. I replied, "I'm fine. I just had some business to attend to," I said. "All right, a break then. Love you, Mom." Those 3 words caught my attention, stirring a complex wave of feelings inside me. He cared for me in his own way, yet he had permitted his wife to treat me disrespectfully for years. He stood silently while she eroded my self-respect and my place in their lives. Love that lacks respect is meaningless. "Love you too," I responded anyway, because despite everything, it was true. The following morning, I dressed deliberately, a simple navy dress that I knew flattered me, along with pearl earrings gifted by Robert and light makeup. I wanted to exude strength and confidence. Driving to their house, the envelope rested beside me on the passenger seat like a quiet partner. Part of me feared the confrontation that might happen, but another part, long suppressed, welcomed it. This was not about vengeance or even the money. It was about asserting myself, declaring, I matter, my emotions matter, and my dignity matters. Pulling into their driveway, I noticed Nicole's car, but not Paul's. Good. This was between her and me, at least for now. I grabbed the envelope, checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, then exited the vehicle. With every step toward their front door, my front door in a way, I grew more certain. For the first time in years, I was reclaiming control, and it felt right. Nicole opened the door, dressed in yoga attire. Dressed in pants paired with a designer tank top, her blonde hair perfectly tied back in a sleek ponytail. Her expression changed from surprise to exhaustion the moment she noticed me. Anne, I wasn't expecting you, she said. I replied with a steadiness in my voice that surprised even me. I need to talk to you. May I come in? After a brief pause, she moved aside and said, Of course, I was just about to have some tea. Would you like some? I declined politely. No, thank you. I won't take long. I followed her into the living area and immediately spotted the vase prominently placed on the mantelpiece. The vase I had bought with my own money, a silent symbol of her disdain. Is there a problem? Nicole asked as she settled gracefully onto the couch, crossing her legs with finesse. I have something for you, I said, handing her an envelope. Her eyebrows lifted in surprise as she accepted it. What is this? She inquired. Open it, I urged. Sliding her manicured finger beneath the flap, she pulled out the notice inside. I observed her expression closely, seeing the moment clarity struck. Her eyes grew wide, then narrowed, while a flush crept up her cheeks. This is a joke, right? She questioned sharply. Looking up at me, her voice was strained. No joke. It is an official notice about a rent increase starting in 30 days, I responded. She rose abruptly, clutching the paper tightly. You're tripling our rent just like that, she demanded. I have done my homework. This is the market rate for a property this size and location, I informed her. Market rate? She let out a bitter laugh. We are family, not some random renters. Yes, we are family, I agreed calmly, which is exactly why I have been charging only 1/3 of what I could. For the past 5 years, I have been supporting your way of life, Nicole. And I did it willingly because I wanted to help Paul, but circumstances shift. This is really about the vase, is it not? She folded her arms. I was trying to do something kind for you, and now you are punishing us. Kind? I raised my eyebrow. You charged a $5,000 ornament to my credit card without my consent and left a message calling me a burden. That does not seem very kind to me. Her expression grew stern. You have always been so critical. Nothing we do ever meets your standards. I nearly laughed at the irony. I, who had given selflessly without complaint, was being labeled judgmental by the woman who found fault in everything from my attire to my meals. This is not about judgment, I stated. It concerns respect and boundaries. Paul will never accept this, she said, brandishing the notice. If you intend to inform him of your actions, by all means, I interrupted. Tell him everything, including how you used my credit card and what you wrote in that note. A flicker passed through her eyes. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. Had she not shared with Paul the matter of the vase and the note? The front door opened and Paul's voice announced, I'm home. The meeting ended early. Nicole's eyes darted toward the hallway, then back to me. Do not do this, she said quietly but urgently. Consider what it will do to the family. Before I could reply, Paul stepped into the room. Mom, what a pleasant surprise. He came over and kissed my cheek, then noticed the tension in the room. What's happening? Nicole quickly folded the note and tucked it into her pocket. Nothing important. Your mom just stopped by for a chat. I looked at her, then at my son. At that moment, I faced a decision. I could confront Nicole directly, force the issue, or allow her to share the news with Paul in her own way and time. Actually, I said, I came to deliver something, a letter notifying you of an adjustment to the rent to match current market rates. Paul's face showed confusion. Adjusting the rent by how much? It's increasing to $3,600 a month, I said, observing his reaction. His eyes widened. That's triple what we're paying now. Yes, I confirmed. I have been subsidizing your housing for 5 years, but I cannot continue to do so anymore. But Mom, that's Paul running a hand through his hair, clearly shocked. That's an enormous hike. We can't handle that on such short notice. You have 30 days to figure it out, I said, keeping my tone soft but resolute. I'm confident that between both your incomes, you will manage. Nicole made a small noise and Paul glanced at her. Nicole doesn't have a job, he reminded me, as if I might have forgotten. Maybe it's time she got one, I suggested. Nicole's face grew red with anger. This is outrageous. You can't just hit us with this unexpectedly. We have a child. Yes, little Robert, my grandson. I smiled warmly. Fond of the 4-year-old who carried my late husband's name. How is he? He is fine, Paul replied automatically, still appearing shocked. Mom, can we discuss this? There must be some confusion. There is no confusion, I stated firmly. I have been charging you far below the usual rate for many years. That was my decision. Now I am choosing differently. This is my property, and I must make a business decision. Business decision? Nicole's voice rose sharply. We are your family. Yes, and family should treat each other with respect, I responded, meeting her gaze directly. Families should never exploit one another. Paul glanced between us, puzzled and uncertain. What exactly is happening here? Did something occur? Nicole stepped forward quickly. Nothing is wrong. Your mother is simply causing trouble. Actually, I interrupted, something did happen. Why not show Paul the vase, Nicole? The one on the mantelpiece? Explain where it came from. Show him the note you left with it. Paul turned to glance at the vase, then back at his wife. What vase? What note? Nicole's face had turned pale. It is nothing, just a misunderstanding. It's a $5,000 vase Nicole bought using my credit card without my consent, I said quietly. She left a note saying it was meant to make up for the burden of having me in your lives. The silence that followed was overwhelming. Paul looked at Nicole, then at the vase, and then back at his wife. Is that true? He asked at last, his voice full of disbelief. His voice was barely above a whisper. Nicole's face contorted, tears suddenly filling her eyes. You don't get it. She's distorting everything. I was trying to do something kind by taking from my mother. Paul's tone was filled with disbelief. I wasn't stealing. I planned to return it, and the note was not serious. It was only meant as a joke. Nicole's voice had grown desperate. Show him the note, I said softly. Nicole stayed still. I moved toward the mantelpiece, reached behind a vase, and pulled out the cream-colored envelope still hidden there. I handed it to Paul. He read the note, his face turning progressively pale. When he looked up, confusion and pain filled his eyes. Nicole, how could you write something like this to my mother? She is exaggerating, Nicole insisted, tears streaming down her cheeks. It wasn't intended that way. Your mother has always been so critical of me, constantly judging everything I do. Stop, Paul said firmly. Just stop. He turned to me, his expression a mix of shock and regret. Mom, I had no idea. I am truly sorry. The room was thick with heavy silence. Paul stood between us, still clutching the harsh note, his face showing confusion and sorrow. I think you both need to talk, I said softly. I will leave. No, Mum. Wait. Paul's voice halted me as I turned to walk away. Please stay. I want to understand what has been going on. Nicole wiped at her tears. Tears stained her flawless makeup, now smeared. This is all a big misunderstanding, she insisted. Anne is exaggerating everything. Am I? I asked calmly. Explain to me, Nicole. How should I understand someone using my credit card without my consent and leaving a note calling me a burden? Paul glanced at his wife, waiting for her reply. Nicole's expression changed, her tears drying up abruptly. "Fine," she burst out. "You want the truth?" "I'm sick of pretending. Your mother has been holding this house over our heads for ages, Paul constantly dropping subtle hints about her generosity and all the help she's providing." "I have never," I began, but Nicole interrupted sharply. "You do not need to say it out loud. It is written on every glance, every sigh. Poor Paul and Nicole, they cannot stand on their own feet." Her voice was bitter and cold. "So yes, I purchased the vase. I wanted something beautiful for our home, something that proved we were not charity cases." Paul shook his head, clearly confused. "Mom never made me feel that way because you are her beloved son," Nicole said mockingly. "But I am just the outsider who took you away from her." I watched the tense moment from afar, oddly detached. It felt like years of silent bitterness were finally erupting like venom from a deep wound. "That is not true," I said quietly. "My only wish has always been for Paul's happiness. I have tried to accept you into our family, Nicole. You judge me unfairly. Everything I do is met with criticism about my parenting, my housekeeping, my decisions." I blinked, genuinely perplexed. "When exactly have I ever judged you? You don't need to say a word. It's clear in your eyes and the way you purse your lips as you glance around our home." Paul stepped between us. "Nicole, that is enough. My mother has been nothing but helpful. She has been charging us a third of the house's actual value for 5 years, and now she is tripling the rent. Is that truly supportive?" Nicole's voice rose sharply. "She is trying to push us out after you stole from her." Paul responded firmly, his tone growing colder. "After you left her that note, do you understand how painful that was?" Nicole's face turned red. "It was meant as a joke." "It was not funny," Paul said firmly. "And it was no joke. You meant it." A tense silence followed. I looked closely at my son, really looked, and noticed something I had not seen in many years. The strong, upright young man I raised, not the passive husband who always deferred to his wife. "There is more," I said softly. They both turned and faced me. "Look at me. This is not just about the vase or the note. It is about years of little cruelties, of feeling like an outsider in your lives except when you needed something from me." I sighed deeply. It is about being treated like a convenience rather than a mother or grandmother. Paul's expression fell. "Mom, I never intended to make you feel that way." "I know you didn't, sweetheart, but you allowed it to happen." You remained silent while Nicole made remarks about my clothing, my hairstyle, and my house. You said nothing when she rearranged my furniture during visits, as if my taste was something to be ashamed of. You observed her break my mother's teacup, the sole keepsake I had from her, and accepted her feeble excuse that it was an accident. Paul turned to Nicole, his expression filled with doubt. She insisted, "She is exaggerating again. I have always been perfectly respectful." The absurdity of it nearly made me laugh. "Respectful? Allow me to remind you of a few moments. Last Thanksgiving, you told everyone my stuffing had an old-fashioned charm, but then served your own instead. At Robert's 4th birthday, you introduced me to your friends as Paul's mother, rather than by my own name, as though my identity depended solely on your husband. Last Christmas, you presented me with an anti-aging cream set, accompanied by a card stating, 'Because everyone deserves to look their best.'" Paul's eyes widened at each example. "I never noticed." "You were not meant to," I replied softly. "Nicole is careful to make her remarks when you are not paying attention, or cast them as compliments so that I appear overly sensitive if I object." Nicole's face transformed into an expression filled with bitterness. "So what if I did? You have never accepted me. You have always looked down on me because I did not attend college and because I chose to be a stay-at-home mother." "That is not true," I said with conviction. "I have only ever—" Paul wanted to be happy, and I have tried to be a supportive mother-in-law despite your constant attempts to undermine me." "Undermine me?" Nicole let out a sharp laugh. "You are always present, always playing the perfect mother and grandmother, making me feel like I am not enough. Do you even realize what it is like to live in the shadow of St. Anne? Paul stepped forward. There is no rivalry, Nicole. She is my mother. You are my wife. I love you both. Nicole's expression twisted. Well, then you have to make a choice. Either you back me up in this or what? Paul asked softly. Or I will take Robert and go to my mother's, Nicole said, her tone threatening. A heavy silence settled. I looked at my son, saw the hurt in his eyes, and my heart ached for him. I did not want this conflict to ruin his marriage or break his family. Despite everything, I did not want him to suffer. Nobody has to leave, I said at last. This is not about picking sides. It is about respect. All I have ever wished for was to be treated with simple kindness and thoughtfulness. Paul nodded, then faced his wife. Mum is right. This is not about taking sides. It is about how we treat each other. And Nicole, the way you have acted toward my mother is not acceptable. Nicole's face crumpled, tears now rolling down. I did not mean to hurt anyone, she whispered quietly. I just always felt like I was not enough, like I could never live up to what your family wanted. I felt an unexpected wave of compassion. Was that the reason behind the long years of subtle harshness and uncertainty? No one ever expected you to be anything but yourself, I said softly, and to always show kindness. Paul wrapped his arm around his wife, yet his eyes remained resolute. We need to set this right, Nicole, starting with a genuine apology to my mother. Nicole looked at me with an expression filled with complicated feelings. For the first time, I noticed vulnerability beneath the flawless image she usually maintained. I'm sorry, she whispered, referring to the vase, the note, and everything else. It wasn't sufficient after years of deliberate cruelty, but it was a beginning. Thank you, I replied calmly. Paul then turned to me and said, and Mom, about the rent increase. I raised my hand to stop him. That decision stays. It's time for both of you to fully take charge of your lives without relying on my financial support. I will still assist in other ways, like with childcare and emotional backing, but the lowered rent was only ever supposed to be temporary. He nodded slowly, saying, I understand. We will work it out. For the first time in many years, I felt my son truly recognized me, not just as a mother who gives endlessly, but as a person with emotions, limits, and dignity. In that instant, something shifted between us, something essential and unavoidable. 3 months had gone by since that confrontation in Paul and Nicole's living room. Those were 3 months filled with change, adjustment, and painful, yet required growth for all involved. They had vacated my rental property exactly 2 weeks after receiving the notice. Not to Nicole's mother's place in Florida, as she had warned, but to a modest apartment closer to Paul's workplace. It was smaller than my house, but it fit their budget without needing my financial support. I listed the property at market price and secured tenants within a few days. A young doctor and her husband, who were thrilled with the home and had no difficulty paying the rent. The extra money was a blessing, allowing me to finally upgrade my own kitchen and begin setting aside funds for little Robert's college education. Paul reached out the day after they moved. His voice was hesitant when he said, Mom, can we have dinner this weekend? Just the two of us. We chose a cozy Italian restaurant that we both cherished. When he showed up, I noticed how weary he appeared. Yet there was something else in his face, a newfound maturity perhaps. How have you been? I asked as we settled in. Busy, he admitted. The apartment is smaller, so we had to cut back a lot. And Nicole, he paused. Nicole was actively searching for a job. I raised an eyebrow in surprise. Nicole had always insisted that being a stay-at-home mom was her true purpose, even though Robert was in preschool 5 days a week. She has an interview at a design firm next week, Paul continued. She's genuinely excited about it and says she needs something that belongs solely to her. I smiled warmly and said, That's wonderful, and I truly meant it. Maybe things were finally changing. Having her own profession and establishing her own identity beyond simply being Paul's wife and Robert's mother, would provide Nicole with the self-assurance she seemed to be missing. That same confidence had sometimes made her put others down. Paul reached across the table and took my hand. "Mom, I need to apologize to you." "A big apology," he said. I responded firmly. "Paul, no. Please let me express this." His gaze was sincere. "I let you down. I was so absorbed in my marriage and trying to keep Nicole content that I overlooked how she was treating you. I told myself her remarks were not that harmful and believed you were strong enough to deal with them." He shook his head in regret and added, "But that is no excuse. I should have defended you. I should have realized what was happening." I squeezed his hand gently. "Yes, you should have, but I should have spoken up earlier too. I was terrified of damaging my relationship with you and Robert, so I allowed things to slide when I should not have." Paul said firmly, "You will never lose me. You are my mother, and I love you." My throat tightened as I answered, "I love you too. Always have, always will." That evening, we talked for hours, genuinely connecting in a way we had not for years. We covered topics like his marriage, his career ambitions, his dreams for the future, as well as my life, friendships, and my recent passion for watercolor painting. It felt like reuniting with a close friend after a long time apart. As we finished dessert properly this time, Paul said, "Nicole wants to apologize too. Would you be open to meeting with her?" I hesitated. Despite everything, I was reluctant to encounter Nicole again. Yet declining would only deepen the strain, create further divides. "Yes," I admitted at last, "I am open to meeting." 7 days later, Nicole arrived at my home alone. She appeared different, less refined, more authentic. Her hair was simply tied back in a ponytail, and she had on minimal makeup. "Thank you for meeting with me," she said as I ushered her into the sitting room. "Would you care for some tea?" I offered. She gave a small nod, and I busied myself in the kitchen, giving us a moment to gather our thoughts. Returning with the tea tray, I noticed she was studying the family pictures on my mantelpiece. "I have not seen this one before," she remarked, pointing to a photo of Paul around 12, proudly displaying a science fair ribbon. "That was the year after his father passed away," I explained while setting down the tray. He had poured so much effort into that project. It was the first time I saw him truly smile after we lost Robert. Nicole's face softened. "You raised him on your own from that age." "Yes, it was difficult, yet we managed," I responded while pouring the tea. "Paul was a good boy and remains a good man." "Indeed," she said quietly, "he really is." She accepted the cup I offered, her hands trembling faintly. "Anne, I need to apologize to you. A sincere apology this time." I nodded silently, waiting for her to continue. "I have been harsh towards you, disrespectful, and unappreciative." Taking a deep breath, she confessed, "The truth is, I have always been intimidated by you. You are so capable and confident. Paul admires you deeply." I was worried I might never live up to him, I confessed quietly. "Live up to what?" I inquired softly. "To the woman who raised him alone, who gave up everything for him, who created a life and career without relying on anyone." Tears filled her eyes. "Beside you, I felt insignificant. I was taken aback. All this time, I had assumed Nicole looked down on me, when actually, she had been intimidated by me." "I never intended to make you feel that way," I assured her. "You did not," she replied firmly. "It was my own lack of confidence. But instead of confronting that, I tried to belittle you, to diminish you so I could feel more important." She brushed a tear away. "That was wrong, and I am truly sorry." I looked at her face and saw sincere regret there. "Thank you for expressing that," I said. "It really means a great deal." "I am trying to change," she admitted. "The job interview went well. They offered me a role as a junior designer. It is not much, but it is a beginning." "That is fantastic," I said genuinely. "You always had a great sense of design." She appeared surprised by the praise. "Thank you. I am nervous, yet excited as well." We conversed for another hour, not as mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, but as two women striving to understand one another better. It was not flawless. There were still uneasy moments, still a tiredness between us, but it marked a start. "I would like Robert to spend more time with you," Nicole said as she was leaving. "He misses his grandmother." I felt a surge of happiness at the thought of that. I wished to see my grandson more frequently. That would mean a lot to me. Half a year later, I found myself in the audience at Robert's preschool graduation. I watched with pride as the group of 5-year-olds proudly paraded across the modest stage wearing paper caps. Paul sat next to me and Nicole beside him, both glowing with happiness as our little boy received his diploma. After the ceremony, the 4 of us went out for ice cream. Robert excitedly talked about starting kindergarten, his friends, and the new puppy that Paul and Nicole had finally agreed he could have. "We have some news," Paul said while Robert was focused on his chocolate dessert. I looked up, intrigued. "Nicole got promoted," he announced with pride. "She's now a senior designer after just 6 months." "That's fantastic," I replied, turning to Nicole. "Congratulations," I added. She returned my words with a warm, sincere smile that no longer showed any signs of past bitterness. "Thank you. And there is even more," she said, glancing at Paul, who nodded in support. "We are buying a house. It is small, but it will be ours." Paul explained that with their combined income, they qualified for a mortgage, and the paperwork would be finalized next month. A wave of pride washed over me. They were becoming independent and creating a life together without relying on my financial help. That was all I had ever hoped for them. "This calls for a celebration," I said. "Perhaps I could host a housewarming party once you are settled." "We would like that," Nicole responded, and I sensed she truly meant it. As we walked toward our cars, Robert slipped his tiny hand into mine, creating a moment I cherished deeply. "Grandma, may I stay at your house next weekend? Daddy mentioned you have paints now." "I do have paints," I confirmed, smiling warmly at him. "Watercolors. Would you like to learn how to use them?" He nodded eagerly. "Mummy says you are very skilled." I glanced at Nicole, surprised. She shrugged, looking a bit shy. "I saw your painting in the hallway, the one with the sunset. It is stunning." "Thank you," I said, genuinely moved by the heartfelt praise. Paul helped Robert into his car seat, then turned to me. "Love you, Mom," he said, giving me a hug. "Love you too," I replied, holding him close for a moment. Driving home, I thought about the past year, the hurt caused by Nicole's note, the confrontation, and the changes that followed. It had been challenging for all of us. There were tears, disagreements, and difficult talks. Yet, from that painful honesty came something precious: respect. Not just a superficial display of family peace, but true respect. For my boundaries, my emotions, and my role in their lives. The $5,000 vase still rested on my mantel. Paul had insisted I keep it since it had been purchased with my money. It was lovely, certainly, but its real significance was in what it revealed: the hidden resentments, unspoken pains, and repetitive patterns that were slowly damaging our family. Sometimes, I reflected, the most meaningful gifts arrive disguised as wounds. And sometimes it requires In a critical moment that opened the path for recovery, I parked my car in the driveway and gazed up at my house, my sanctuary. The kitchen windows sparkled with freshly installed glass. The garden I had planted during the spring was blooming beautifully, and inside, my watercolors awaited me on the table beside the window. This was life on my own terms. I smiled as I turned the key in the lock. The cost of ingratitude had been steep, yet the rewards of truthfulness and standing up for myself were proving to be far more valuable than any vase, property, or sum of money could ever be. Now, I wonder about you who have heard my tale. What would you do if you found yourself in my situation? Have you ever experienced something like this? Please share your thoughts in the comments. Meanwhile, on the final screen, I am sharing 2 other favorite stories from the channel, which are sure to surprise you. Thank you for watching until the very end.